Hi, this is Betsy Scott with the Housing Innovation Alliance. Welcome to everyone who's joining us this afternoon. We're going to get started on time today. We'll probably have other people floating in, but wanted to take a moment to tee up today's discussion before I turn the floor over to our hosts, which are Katy Biggerstaff from NewGround PR Marketing and Stacy Freed, who's a well-known writer in the industry, and she is a contributing editor to the Alliance. So the Alliance, for those of you who aren't familiar with us, is focused on attainable middle-income single-family housing. Really have an active audience and network that is focused on delivering better homes and becoming better businesses, really in collaborating with others in the industry to do so. The reason we're talking about today's topic is that we are, as an organization, looking at the bigger vision for the future of housing and how innovation can help us get there. One of the main topics that we've been talking about for several years now really is offsite construction. And a lot of times we look at it from an operational perspective. How can we benefit from our supply chain? How can we benefit from a talent and labor perspective? What does it do to our relationships with manufacturers, et cetera? How can we improve the quality and the delivery of our product? But we also need to be looking at what consumer expectations are and how, best practices for how builders who are delivering with offsite are managing those expectations throughout the process. So we want to focus on that today. You heard us, if you came on early, you heard us riffing a little bit in the background about the International Builder Show. So wanted to touch on that for a minute. It was great to be live and connected to so many people last week. I think there were probably about 50,000 people who joined us out in Orlando. And offsite construction was a big part of that conversation. We actually had a couple of sessions we participated in directly, one of which was a panel discussion on driving innovation within your business that included Mighty Buildings and Van Meter Homes and KTGY Architecture. We also had a snapshot of kind of the state of offsite construction and different construction methods on the Show Village stage. Again, with Mighty, Sam did a twofer for us for last week's event, as well as Colby Swanson and others. So we've talked about how the construction process is changing. There was a lot of excitement at the event about that. And we're really going to be stringing together some of the conversations that we had last week with what we hear today to share a bigger picture kind of on the state of offsite construction in our industry through our partnerships with SGC, Horizon, which is Professional Builder, and Construct Utopia. So Stacy, as our co-host today, is also a contributing editor for that publication, is going to be collaborating with them on some follow-up content, and we'll be pulling some of the best of pieces from last week and from this week and kind of packaging those together to share with the industry. So I'm excited to see what comes out of today's discussion, really looking at what we're capable of doing and value we're capable of delivering from an offsite perspective and how we manage those expectations. And we're going to talk about really the whole customer life cycle, from acquisition to the broader perception and value in the industry and how we talk to customers about that before the sale or rental, how we manage expectations through delivery and beyond. And then what are some of the lessons learned? What are some of what we like to call fail forwards? Maybe something didn't work as well initially as you thought it might, but you were able to learn some valuable lessons from it. So we've got some of that coming from our panel today, as well as kind of how they're looking at the future and perhaps how their approach might be changing in relation to that. So as participants today, you'll be able to add something, any questions or comments that you have, to the chat function. Please make sure when you do that, that you select everyone so that the whole panel and all other attendees can see that. We end up having lots of nice little conversations typically in the chat area for these sessions, and we will capture that information and make it part of what we roll out afterwards as well. And then as one last housekeeping issue, but very important to us, is to thank our partners. Programming like today's session, like our ability to go to IBS and touch a lot of topics and a lot of audiences last week, wouldn't be possible without the support of our partners. And we heard a lot of interesting things from them last week that will likely come out in our content over the next few weeks as well. So just wanted to give them a shout out. I'm going to turn the floor over to Stacy to introduce everyone. And then you'll just be seeing slides for a few more minutes as we give you some visuals to go around to support what our panelists will be teeing up for you. And then it will become a more open conversation. So again, please type any questions or comments you have in the chat function. And take it away, Stacy.
Hi there, I'm Stacy Freed, and for nearly a decade, I was a senior editor at Hanley Wood's Remodeling Magazine. I'm sure I know many of you from those days at Hanley Wood, which is now Zonda. Since 2013, though, I've been covering all aspects of the building industry. As a freelance writer, I've reached out to consumer audiences and trade audiences. And I'm really excited today to introduce our three panelists, all of whom have tremendous insight into the topic of offsite construction and managing consumer expectations. I know you're going to learn a lot today, as well as from our facilitator, Katy Biggerstaff. So I'm also going to be listening in, as Betsy had said, for story ideas, and I'm certain that you are going to learn a lot. So I'll start off by introducing Natalia Dobrynina, head of sales at Mighty Buildings, and she leads the sustainable 3D printed home companies' go-to-market strategies for both B2C and B2B. And she created a customer experience program, formulated sales strategies, brought in $20 million in revenue, nurtured relationships with real estate agents, brokers, and realtors to grow a referral pipeline with 200 plus ambassadors. And we have Brian Gaudio, who's the Chief Executive Officer at Module. He was inspired to start Module, which uses off-site construction to design and build highly functional and affordable homes that will last 100 years. Module delivers infill, single-family, attached or detached product, and they work with modular and panelized manufacturers of 3D boxes or 2D wall panels. Finally, there's Steve Linton, who's the president of Deltec Homes. Steve's background is broad. It's in residential and commercial construction, and he is an educator, green building specialist, and a thought leader in sustainability and resilience. Deltec builds the structural shell for customizable panoramic, traditional, and modern homes, all products that can withstand hurricane force winds. And finally, I'm going to turn this all over to Katy Biggerstaff, who is a vice president of public relations at NewGround PR Marketing. And Katy uses her expertise in commercial and residential real estate to help an impressive list of real estate and home building clients build brand awareness and grow market share. NewGround cuts through the hype and chatter to develop branding initiatives, PR campaigns, ROI-driven social media, digital marketing, and influencer campaign initiatives. Thank you all for joining us. I look forward to hearing and participating in this conversation. Take it away, Katy.
Thanks so much, Stacy. And thank you to the Housing Innovation Alliance for having me. I'm really excited about the panel today to be able to talk to innovators in our industry that are doing amazing things to tackle challenges like efficiency, sustainability, affordability, and more. So as Betsy had shared, we're going to start kind of high level, talking a little bit about customer acquisition and how each of our panelists go about finding their customers and, more importantly, talking to them. Natalia, why don't we start with you? If you could maybe just talk a little bit about Mighty Buildings' kind of overall value proposition or elevator speech, essentially, kind of who your ideal clients are and what markets you're in.
Absolutely. And Thank you for having me here. So I'm with Mighty Buildings, and Mighty Buildings is a construction startup based out of the Bay Area, which uses 3D printing technology, robotics, and automation to make sustainable homes faster. So one of the things that makes Mighty Buildings different is that we've got this unique material that we developed that no one else has. So we're using light to make this material solid. I mean, it is a UV curable material, which means it hardens instantaneously when we hit the material with the light. This material, LSM, has a strength of reinforced concrete, and it weighs 4 times less, and it has 4 times more insulation capabilities. This material is also water, fire, and thermal resistant. And at the end of the day, we do have one of the largest 3D printers in the world, which extrudes this material and makes building components out of this unique material. What's also unique about that is we do eliminate 95% of all waste associated with the traditional build, because the 3D printer extrudes or 3D prints what we need to produce or manufacture. So we create practically zero waste. And our goal is to leverage this technology at scale and produce sustainable homes. So that's our main value proposition.
And you work both with B2B and B2C?
Yeah, so Mighty Buildings' goal was always to work with B2B, with developers, builders, governments. But, there were a lot of complexities. We started right away with B2B. So our company started in the ADU market, actually, and single family home market. But we always kept the goal of working with businesses in mind, because, we see construction space, from a fundamental problem perspective. How do we build sustainable homes, but build them at scale? So yeah, we started with ADU market. We've done, a fair number of those projects. And now we're working on multiple communities, and yeah.
Okay, I think now we'll go to Brian and tell us a little bit about Module and your value prop and who your clients are and where you're building.
Sure. So my name is Brian. I'm the CEO at Module, and our goal is to bring better quality, better design homes to more people. Ultimately, that's the goal we started the company with. And when we see the kind of macro picture of 4 million we need 4 million homes to keep pace with demand. The question that we're trying to answer is, how can we enable more people to become home builders? And how can we enable more home builders to get the power of offsite construction? Because the current number of home builders that exist, unfortunately, that doesn't satisfy today's demand, right? Market demand. So we're 4 million homes short. If Module can deliver a product and process that enables more people to become home builders and existing home builders to leverage the power of offsite construction, then it's a win for the industry. So that's really kind of why we do what we do. We're a certified zero energy ready home builder, and we've developed a product line, which you see here, which goes as small as an ADU up to a small multifamily building in townhomes in between. So we think of this as missing middle housing. And we're focused on infill projects. And we're based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but we're working on some pilot projects in markets outside of Pittsburgh. And this is an example of the photo behind, the photo in the background is a mixed income development that we built here in Pittsburgh. And our value prop is we're going to help builders and developers leverage the power of offsite construction to build a project in a shorter time frame with higher quality control, and that is going to have lower operating costs for the end users that are moving into that space. So that's our value prop. And we also launched the company direct to consumer, building one-off houses for one-off clients, and are now serving what we call housing providers, builders, developers, affordable housing groups that are looking to build great projects in their communities.
Great. Okay. And then last but not least, Steve can walk us through what Deltec's doing.
Yeah, thanks, Katie, and good afternoon or good morning to everybody. Deltec is really in the business of designing stronger connections between people and the world around them. So this idea of connection is really in everything we do. So our homes are panoramic. You can see the photo there. The home is curved in a sense. And so you get these amazing views connecting you with the natural world outside. They're super sustainable. You heard the other panelists talk about that as well. Our homes are connecting people with the idea of improving our world, right? They're exceptionally resilient. So they connect you physically to the earth and resist hurricanes and natural disasters. And you can sort of get a snapshot of sort of the bones underneath the hood, so to speak. The design is also really cutting edge and creative. So there's tons of open space. People are connected to their family and their loved ones. So Deltec's really been designing and building homes with those attributes: superb strength, superb sustainability, superb scenic views. We've been doing that for over 50 years. We've built well over 5,000 homes all over the globe. Really what we're best known for is how we combine sustainability and resiliency. And we work a lot in disaster-prone areas. And so really we believe that in those areas, you can't have one without the other. You can't have sustainability without resiliency and vice versa. They work hand in hand. And that's really the intersection of those two is where we specialize. The last thing I would say, our homes are incredibly beautiful too. Just imagine being able to look out over the panorama of, the entire coastline, all from the same vantage point. You really feel a connection to the natural world outside. And when, people choose to live in beautiful places, whether it's, on the coastline in a mountainscape, they do so in order to have that emotional connection to the world around them. And that's really what we hope to deliver to people.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. I think now we just want to dig a little bit deeper and kind of get into market perception and value. The offsite construction has been happening for a long time, but I think there have maybe traditionally been different maybe attitudes or outlooks on what that is. So I'd love to just kind of hear from you guys what you think in terms of if there's a stigma out there about quality and value of offsite construction. Certainly in what you just shared with your value propositions, it seems like that's, not an issue at all. But when you're talking to customers and trying to, teach them, I guess, is there, how do you navigate that, I guess? Steve, is that maybe something you want to tackle first?
Sure, I'd be happy to. When I started in the offsite industry 15 years ago, I would say that there definitely was a stigma around, it's given so many different names. Maybe that's part of our problem: offsite, prefab, modular, manufactured, et cetera, et cetera. I think that stigma is less and less apparent to me, and especially with the end user, right? Ultimately, I find that homeowners are very discerning, right? They're not walking up to their car dealer and saying, hey, will you build me this brand new car, but do it outside in the parking lot here in the weather? They understand intuitively that they're getting a better product when they're going to an offsite solution. I think that being said, I think part of our challenge as an industry is not getting too stuck on that offsite is the only reason or the main reason they're coming to us. It's an important part of the story, but ultimately, we have to have a solution that the customer is after, right? And I think the great thing about offsite construction is it offers a lot of different solutions. For some products, that's price point. For some, that's sustainability. For others, it's stronger, or it's going to last longer, or maybe combinations of those. But I think we have to recognize that people are making decisions about their homes in an emotional way a lot of times. And so it's that primal brain that's looking at what they're doing, and we have to have something there that is attractive to them and exciting to them, right? So for Deltec, that's the idea that, hey, I'm connected to this natural world. I can see things, but I'm also protected from, the fury of Mother Nature. And once I have that, then I can sort of justify why I'm making that decision logically, because, hey, this is built off site, so I know it's more sustainable, it's more waste efficient, it's, you know, all of the benefits that we get from that. So I think part of the challenge of our industry has been we've put the prefab, the offsite first, thinking that that's the main reason people come to us. I don't think that's why they come to us. I think that's a supporting reason. So we got to have something, you know, that they really want to continue to help kind of move away from that stigma.
Makes a lot of sense. Brian, would you agree with that in terms of the kind of the emotional buy?
Yeah, I do think that it is an emotional purchase. It's interesting. A lot of the customers that we talk to most recently are Tesla drivers. So they believe in the values that that company represents, and they see, and that's just an observation, like there are a lot of Teslas pulling up to view this open house. And I think the people that thinking about electric vehicles, our homes are all electric. So I do see that parallel thought process, and people were, in my experience, purchasing Teslas because it was cool, not because it was going to save the planet necessarily, because it was cool to be associated with something like that. So that's some of that kind of emotional pull I think that we'll see from clients. I will say that the stigma is strong and it's here to stay, unfortunately. And I see the stigma in realtors, I see the stigma in lenders. And those are ultimately who we're talking to, customers, people, boots on the ground. So the lending community and the realtor community, I feel many of them do not understand the difference between a home that's built modularly and a manufactured HUD code home. And I have to explain that to people quite often. So I think until those industries who are ultimately handling, you know, Steve and Natalia can do the best job describing their product. But at the end of the day, if lenders are questioning it and realtors don't understand it, then the greater perception of the average person on the street is going to be questioning. They will be questioning, what does it mean to have a home that's built offsite?
And actually, to add to Brian's, I think it's more like the appraisals on the lending side that have that stigma. And I mean, we did actually have successful cases when we were able to, like, you can't get to the appraisal, but you can provide as much like documentation or like brochures and like as much information as possible for them to treat the home like in a traditional way in order to find comps in the area. So like one of the challenging areas was Joshua Tree, for example, but we were able to navigate through that situation by just providing as much information as possible. But yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't difficult. Yeah, but I do agree that there's definitely a stigma around like homes built offsite. And I mean, I do believe, because we did start about 4 years ago, and I've been talking to our very, very first customers, I do believe that stigma is slowly fading away and people do understand more and more the value of building offsite. They definitely understand the time savings that they're getting. Clients understand that they do know approximately 50 or 60% of their budget upfront, which is super appealing, that they know what to budget for. They know what they're getting at the end. Like they can pick the finishes and they can actually walk through the product before it arrives to their site. And like, it's going to meet expectations. So like there are no surprises. I think in order to navigate that stigma, we just definitely put a lot of like educational videos, how we're, not different from, traditional build, and actually educating why it is a better quality product. I think that was the biggest challenge, to explain that, hey, this makes more sense. And I think what really helped is allowing, like, having showrooms and like pop-ups throughout the entire state, so like people could actually come, take a look, see, and get surprised, because they do think it's a tiny home. They do think it's a manufactured home. When they come and they see that it's not actually tiny, they're like, okay, I could live in it. Like my mom could live in it. And it is certainly, an emotional purchase for consumers. So.
Can we maybe talk a little bit more, dig a little bit deeper into some of the hurdles? So, you mentioned consumers are one audience, but then you've got lenders and appraisers that are also kind of harder to navigate and talk to, or realtors. How do you, I guess, kind of address those hurdles for those very different audiences? They're all connected, but like you said, you need to have realtors and lenders and other stakeholders believe in your product in order to ultimately get to the consumer. Anyone can jump in.
I mean, anytime we have the opportunity to get, this is one of our it's our show home space here. Anytime we have the opportunity to get anybody here, it's a game changer.
Right.
So get people to walk through your product. And then anytime we can get people to a factory is another game changer. I mean, we host a lot of factory tours. We've even brought a busload of students from Carnegie Mellon up to go check it out. We're in Pittsburgh, so CMU's right around the corner. So getting folks to physically go to those areas, that's the best way I've found it. But that's a very, I don't know how many realtors there are in the United States, but if I had, suggestions for Betsy and the team at HIA, we need to get a large industry groups like the National Association of Realtors and some of the largest lenders out to these events. The people who are attending are the believers in offsite. We've got to find those that have no idea what it means offsite. They might think that's a company thing where you go on vacation, right? As an offsite. So we need to get those folks out to factories and out to see projects. So that would be my suggestion.
I'll jump to Brian's. I think how do we? I guess the question was, how do we navigate different audiences? I mean, I think you have to know the audience and craft the messaging and find the unique approach to, to speak to that audience. And if I talk a little more about the realtor program or real estate agent program, we've actually worked. We built the broker referral program just to kind of get more appealing for them and to understand what their value, like how they can help their client through modular, like build it faster. They could actually, if they build it before the sale, the price of the home could go up. Or if they do it, if the family, let's say, is lacking the space to live, or like 3-bedroom house is not enough, like you could always provide a value with building an ADU. So like if brokers can help their clients provide more solutions, I think that's a win-win. And like, that's what they really appreciated when we kind of talk to them, and kind of having an additional compensation never hurts for them to kind of be invested in the product as well. But that's.
Do you have a specific realtor program?
Yeah, we did. And yeah, I mean, I know I quoted like 200 referral agents, but I think it's like much bigger because not everyone, like ended up like officially signing up, but they were the key driver because they tell a friend and a friend tells another friend, and that's what kind of spread the word. And we hosted a bunch of, realtors events, like factory tours as well, just so they could walk through and they could get familiarized with the product. And they are also the audience that needs to get educated what those are. So you start with, this real estate professionals, and that's how the word spreads to, the entire market.
I think from my perspective, just to go back to maybe something that Brian mentioned, I agree, like, awareness, getting people in the homes, in the factories, that's kind of what it takes to let them know what's even available. And I think the analogy that you made earlier, Brian, on Tesla is an interesting one, or maybe I'll extend it. So Tesla didn't become successful because they went out and convinced all the car dealers in the world to carry their product. And so I think as an industry, as an offsite industry, we're a little bit short-sighted to think that we're going to change this by convincing the realtors and the builders. I've been doing this a long time, and it's yet to happen. So we have to figure out how to create a disruption, right? That's what Tesla did. They kind of did their own thing, and then people started paying attention. So like, how do we disrupt the industry? And I think one of our challenges is the home building industry in whole is very fractured. Even if you take three amazing companies, Deltec, Module, Mighty, like we don't have the kind of horsepower to really get the attention of the nation, right? And so like, how do we get to the disruption where people are like, ooh, this is the next Tesla, or this is the next Tesla-like idea. And just, we're gonna have to go to the consumer. This is what I believe. The consumers are what's gonna drive this. And the more people that ask for it, the more realtors and the more builders will pay attention.
Let's kind of, I guess, shift gears a little bit into managing expectations through delivery and beyond. So, you know, as we've been talking about this whole time here, offsite construction is much different than site-built homes. So how do you kind of engage with customers and keep them updated during manufacturing and installation? Kind of different from, I guess, how you would if you just bought a home from a traditional builder.
I mean, I can jump in here. I think for us, I know the question was more around like how do you keep them updated throughout the manufacturing process, right? So I think what Mighty Buildings was doing is we were taking care of the project from start to finish. And so we were actually doing clients' permits on ADUs and single family homes and still doing those. I think the challenge was to keep the client excited and engaged throughout that process, like was more of a challenge than, you know, throughout, like once it's done, they kind of like expected that delivery is going to happen fast. Yeah, you know, we definitely had a fair share of sort of hiccups, you know, throughout that process, but like navigating between architects, engineers, the city, and like what ultimately the client wants is less of a headache, you know, in conversations, you know, from conversations with the city or county. So like the more we could take it on, but still keep them, you know, updated and engaged throughout that process was like a balance, like a fine line to walk on. But how did we do it? It's just through, you know, the high touch communication. I think we didn't realize it, but every client, because home is, again, very emotional purchase, totally agree with, you know, Brian and Steve, like they want to know what's going on. And we really needed to put a lot of time and like project management's, you know, efforts into, first of all, proactive communication, like, hey, here's what to expect. And like, hey, here's how we're meeting the milestones. I think this was very critical learning for us to get to.
In some ways, it sounds like it is kind of the same process as a site-built home, you know, that high touch, emotional connection, that's the same kind of regardless of where your home and the pieces and components are coming from. So yeah, you know, maybe it isn't all, even though the method is different, maybe the actual, you know, understanding or feeling about the whole process isn't that.
Yeah, I believe it's different from like selling a car, even like buying a Tesla, like when you get updates. And I mean, I've had friends that bought Tesla, but they didn't like they don't get this updates, like, okay, the status changes, like you don't know. And like, there's a lot of frustration in like waiting. So like, you can't allow I mean, with the home purchase, I don't think you can allow that to happen.
So, I think the difference is obviously that part of this is being built in a factory. And in our case, sometimes that's hours away from the project site. So good documentation and video of that process in factory is important. I think the right amount of documentation is what we're learning to tune. I think as a startup, you think about, you know, what can you do to go above and beyond for your client? Because you are trying to build a source of referrals. But then at the same time, as you do more projects, you learn about communication around construction. So I think that's something that we're learning. The one thing I'll say that's unique about a site-built home versus a home we build primarily modular, so volumetric, is set day. Set day is the most exciting thing anybody can think of. My house, with all of my walls, cabinets is going to get lifted with a crane 30 feet in the air. I mean, it's kind of nail biting and exciting at the same time. And that's the best. So we, you know, at a safe distance, have clients come to that because that's wild. I mean, the morning there's a vacant lot, and in the afternoon there's a 3-story house there is wild. And that's, I think, a huge opportunity for to show clients the power of offsite.
Great. Steve, anything?
I think the one story I'll add that's been helpful from our learning and our process is, you know, one of the advantages of having an offsite process is you tend to have a pretty robust process, right? To manufacture something, you've got to dial all the steps in the process in. And that's a good thing. And it's sometimes at odds with the construction industry, which is usually less exacting about things. But I think what we're doing is helping to kind of bring that level of detail to the overall construction process. And so kind of what we've learned is it's that combination of people and process that are really important. And Brian, you kind of alluded to, you have to sort of tune things to see what's too much, what's too little. So what we did several years ago is we sort of moved from a model where we take people from, you work with this department, then you work with this department, then you work with this department. And we sort of created these cross-functional teams, these smaller teams that now that customer works with that same group the whole way through. So they've got that nucleus to work with. And that's comforting to the customer. They kind of always know who to go to. And we have this robust process that's built over, but then each of those little, we call them pods, has flexibility. So we kind of went from this one big, you know, tanker ship on the ocean to being multiple little speedboats. And so each team can work with the customer to meet their needs sort of within the parameters of the process. And that was something I think that was kind of a quantum leap for us in terms of helping to set expectations as well as to meet them.
Brian, you mentioned referrals. Is that a big part of your kind of strategy? And I guess for all the panelists, you know, in growing your business and sort of spreading awareness?
I think we haven't necessarily set up a referral program. We do have a couple of employers in the region that we have preferred home buyer programs with, because for our we build some spec homes in the Pittsburgh area. And so that we know there's a couple of employers that are trying to attract and retain talent in Pittsburgh. So we do have a couple of preferred home buyer programs for those groups. I think, as I think about it, it's the market share right now is 2 to 5% of the total homes built in the United States is offsite. So the more that everybody in the industry can do to share wins and get that out through their networks, the better. You know, so I think the more we can support other companies in the space, then there's a whole nother 95 to 98% of the homes that can be accessed. So I think it's really about sharing wins and sharing data among the companies in the offsite industry to be successful. It will only help us do that.
What about government entities and partnerships or programs through, I guess, either federal or locally? Are there any programs out there? Are there anything that you're doing with that to sort of address affordability issues, or just, you know, bringing homes to market faster? Anything?
Well, certainly, there are a number of projects. I think what I would say is that typically when the government has an affordable housing projects, they have something specific in mind already. So that's been the challenge. Like, we already have a set of floor plans that we offer. So like trying to like fit it into like what their vision was, sometimes, I mean, honestly, didn't really match. And we get the calls, I mean, I mean, almost, I don't know, every day. I was talking to Stinson Beach Housing Alliance yesterday, and yeah, they have specific like 800 to 1,000 square feet, like we need this. And I mean, if you don't have that model, it's just hard, I'd say, because they usually come with something. But we definitely entertained, you know, a number of opportunities. Those typically take longer, and they do require the funds to be set in place first, the government support. So perhaps sometime soon.
Our involvement sort of on the governmental side tends to be less in the way that you're asking, I think, Katie, but we tend to focus on the natural disaster side of things. So, you know, working with, you know, the National Hurricane Center, or, you know, institutes of building science, those types of organizations in the government that are looking at, okay, how do we future-proof our housing stock? And there's a whole other conversation on that. I don't want to derail us, but just to answer your question, that's kind of the direction that we take is, you know, how do we help solve that problem that we're called to solve, which is, you know, 31 million homes on the Atlantic and Gulf Coast that are at risk of damage from hurricanes and high winds.
Is there anything? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Brian.
Yeah, we worked with local government. This project that I'm sitting in was mixed income housing. So we worked with the local redevelopment authority to build market and affordable housing within the same development. And so that was a way to position offsite as a solution to, you know, what the city is calling for and requiring. Our city also has a climate action plan that's looking to go net zero by 2050. I think it's 2050. So again, we can demonstrate that our homes are zero energy ready certified, or designed to be zero energy ready certified, and that all of these components are important. You know, they can help when you're looking to entitle a project. I think the challenge or what we've seen, because we started this company because we believe that more people deserve quality design at a reasonable price point. I think the affordable housing challenge is multifaceted, that requires, you know, financing, land use, zoning. So it's beyond just the powers of one company. So working on those projects is really impactful, and we love doing that, but we know that offsite is not a silver bullet solution for that issue. It's multifaceted.
Okay. And then let's see, I'm checking on the time. Let's maybe jump kind of into bigger picture and sort of lessons learned and path forward, what you're excited about. Can you maybe just each of you just go through and sort of share what Betsy called earlier a fail forward kind of moment or two about, you know, as it relates to managing your customers' expectations and the communities that you serve? Big question.
Or Brian, you ready?
I mean, I think we have those every month. So one example is we talk about offsite as faster delivery time, right? So we discussed that. And pre-pandemic, we were at 2-month lead times with our factory partners, and now we're at 6-month lead times. So when we tell a client the benefit of offsite is you're going to get a product, here's the price, and here's the delivery point, we've had to go back to numerous clients during the pandemic and say, unfortunately, your delivery date changed by a month, and you have a lumber surcharge of 5% on this project. And their response is, well, what the hell? This is supposed to be offsite construction, right? It's supposed to be the price is the price, and it's manufactured and delivered. And that's been hard to communicate. And because you want to sell the benefits of that kind of surety of price and time. But in today's environment, it's becoming more challenging to do that. So that's something that I haven't figured out a way to solve yet. And that's so on a number of projects, we've had to push our delivery date by more than a month. And that's never a fun conversation to have with a client.
Does any of that have to do with the shipping, the actual shipping, the trucking of the materials? And I did have a question about that too, just how far, what's the largest area that you can service based on your factory?
So that has to do with labor shortages that the factories have right now,
Mm-hmm.
and then supply chain, issues. So the only way for us to solve that problem is to have our own modular facility. And it's something that we've actually brought on an investor to help us do. Now those problems, instead of a third party's problem, they become our problem. But I think that's one of the biggest fail forwards we've had is how to communicate faster delivery times. But then you communicate that and it bites you in the ass on the back end when the factory calls and says, hey, people didn't show up to work this week. So that's a challenge we've had.
Okay, Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Brian's example is sort of the issue that we're all facing right now, and I think we're all kind of in the same boat, Brian, and everyone out there. It's a big challenge. Trying to stay ahead of the communication curve and just let people know kind of where they're at before they ask the question is the best thing we've learned from that. Really the way we try to intentionally fail is sort of based on what I already shared. By splitting into a bunch of smaller pods, basically each of these teams can try different things out. So we can experiment with different ways to contract with a builder, or different ways to communicate with a homeowner, or different types of videos to share expectations with the homeowners. And so that's been a nice sort of pilot for us to say, okay, this really worked well and this didn't work so well. But it tends to be on the little things, right? But sometimes the little details are the most important.
Okay.
Well, we do have our own factory, and I think the fail forward moment when we do want to get it out of the factory, but we can't get a permit for one reason or another. That was the biggest, one of the biggest challenges during the pandemic, for sure. Because they were short staffed, they were not open, and it was really hard to get those small projects finished. But luckily, things are opening up, and it just took longer. So again, communication with clients.
So
Great.
I'm gonna jump in. Sorry to overstep, Katie.
No, go ahead.
We've got lots of questions from our audience. So I'm going to throw some out there. Natalie, somebody wants to know, Natalia, sorry, your buildings are pretty modern and unique. Curious how you decided to go forward with design decisions. Did you do market research? Is the product based on the construction method and building science? A lot of questions. How are you adjusting to consumers' needs and the trends of the market? And we could throw this over to Steve as well afterward, because his product's pretty unique as well. But why don't we start with you?
Absolutely. Definitely. We did, before we launched the product, we did a deep dive, customer discovery and customer development, trying to understand what would people appreciate the most. And I think the top reasons and which formulated our value proposition was the design, turnkey services, and faster delivery dates. So and I think it's great to see the validation of the decision to focus on design kind of coming to fruition. John Burns is actually gonna post the survey and the results of the survey that they've conducted, comparing different 3D printing manufacturers of homes, and they compared our design to Icon, and more than I think 59% of people would want to live in our house, because they do appreciate that modern look, the high floor to ceiling glass windows and doors. So there's definitely huge appeal by from the audience for the design, and I'm glad the customer development paid off back in the days.
Steve, did you want to respond, since you also have something quite unique?
Sure, I'll try to be brief, because I know there's a lot of questions. But in our case, I wish I could say there was this master plan back in the 1960s of how we were creating the next generation of home here. But it really turned out as we were building resorts people were staying in these panoramic homes and being like, this is so cool, I have to have one. And so it's kind of back to this idea of awareness. How do we get people to experience firsthand what it's like to live in a unique structure and the benefits of that? So going forward, kind of looking to future innovations, really what we're focused on, as I said earlier, is trying to help to solve the issue of the root cause of climate change, and sort of the fact that we're going to have to live with climate change and the natural disasters that are increasing in intensity. So we're working on things like designing homes that can withstand 225-mile-an-hour wind speeds. That's kind of the next evolution for us. So we're kind of moving in that direction, not necessarily in how do we mass produce millions of homes for everybody in the country, but how do we help address the challenges of climate change specifically.
So one of our listeners is interested in the post-transaction experience. I don't know, how far along we are in this method of building, but are there studies that compare resale value on stick-built homes versus production-built homes?
Not that I'm aware of, but we've tried to look for that, and that's what makes the appraisal process very, very hard for modular, because just simply not enough homes sold with like ADUs, for example, built modular, or just modular homes in general. Maybe gentlemen know, but
we track utility bills for our clients, because part of our value prop is that you're going to have a lower cost to operate. So we've been tracking. So we have some early data from utility bills from our customers. To touch on the previous question though, because our homes are, while they're contemporary, they have more of a traditional kind of exterior elevation. And that was because when we launched the company with a flat roof, very contemporary modern design, you go to a neighborhood association where there's a zoning hearing and they say, they're going to drop what? And it looks like that? No. So we actually modified a lot of our elevations to feel, a lot of them have a traditional pitch roof, to feel more close to home, to what people are used to. And because there's such a stigma around offsite in the first place, to stack on top of that for us, which was, it's going to be so contemporary, in a lot of the zoning hearings we hear, I don't want a spaceship landing in my neighborhood. And their definition of what a spaceship looks like is very different than, maybe an architect's. And so we've sort of pulled back our exteriors to feel like something that can fit on a residential street.
So when you are working with clients, what is the selection process like? Is it more or less difficult for clients to wrap their heads around than, say, doing a custom home? How robust is that, the choices they have to make?
Our clients needed to make an initial choice we were making the choice between two systems that we had, because we have modular, when the unit comes, as Brian described, as a spaceship, actually two pieces sometimes, and then they merge together on site. And we have a kit of parts, which is sort of like a Lego components that do arrive to the site in like kind of container pallets, and then the house is built on site within 6 to 8 weeks. So usually the determination factor is the geography and the location, like whether the crane could be set up in front of the house or behind the house, are there power lines? And so that sort of determines which method of homes the client could get their house built by. So that's something that, we definitely did like an evaluation of the site before recommending a solution to a certain client.
Brian or Steve, do your clients have to sit down and go through a long laundry list of things to choose, or is it pretty turnkey? How do they deal with it?
It's both. It kind of depends on what the customer's after. All of our homes are custom, sort of within the framework that we have. We call them building blocks. So there's millions of ways that you can create a home from our system. But at the end of the day, it's still a custom home. And yes, people most of the time are really attached to that and they want to make those decisions. Other times they're looking for us to help restrain their choices so that they can get through the process and still be married or what have you. But we kind of help people at whatever level they need it. But it is a very involved and detailed process. It has to be, at least from our perspective, to create a custom home.
So we're not in the custom home business. So we are making design decisions up front, and we call our homes models on our website, so different product lines. So the flexibility is, siding colors, perhaps flooring colors, but what we found is that in our case, to get the benefit of a factory, which is production time savings, we will not meet their expectations if we allow them to make all these changes. That's in our business model. So we're not a custom home builder. So we're trying to keep the choices made in the factory created up front and limited availability because we feel that allows us to deliver on a timeline perspective for our projects.
And you all talked about disrupting the industry and about getting more home builders to actually build homes this way. So how do you respond to home builders who are very traditional and have not changed in more than 100 years? And do you see any kind of major event? I mean, a bigger labor shortage, more climate change issues? What's going to move the needle for the industry itself to see this as really viable?
I've been cautiously optimistic seeing some of the big public builders starting their own investment firms and investing in. I think there's some investment. I forget which of the top builders, but they made an investment into a 3D printing company. So I'm intrigued by that. At the end of the day, I think it's about eliminating risk is what offsite can do for a builder. So I think of how we position these types of companies for home builders is to eliminate risk and to help with their labor shortage, right? They have less subs to manage on site because they effectively have a super sub, which is one of the 3 of our companies. That's how we've been talking to builders about this.
Well, one of the trends that we've definitely observed based on just the continuous research kind of in market analytics is the build to rent trend, which is sort of related. So every major home builder is looking and diversifying their portfolio with not necessarily homes for sale, but homes to rent. And when they build those master plan communities, they're really focused to just go beyond the floor plan. I mean, yes, you do have a set of floor plans to pick from, but what they're actually looking for is creating a lifestyle and community in these homes. So I think the next big trend, I could predict though, what's sort of the writing on the wall is that building communities and just focusing them around the lifestyle, just going beyond the floor plan and how you use it, but building an environment for people to live in.
So we have another question about business models, and what have you had to adjust in your business model or method of construction or design based on customer feedback?
Well, as I shared already, we started with purely modular. So all our homes and ADUs were just dropped in the backyard initially. But then we had to go through so many rejections to clients because we just couldn't simply deliver in the Bay Area. Power lines, setbacks, just narrow streets, the crane couldn't get in. Yeah, so that's how we came out with the kit of parts and the panelized kit system, which was one of the kind of best decisions we made so far.
And do you advertise that or market that in a completely different way now, Natalia? Kit of parts?
Not necessarily. I mean, there could be some ways to market it differently. I think at the end of the day, we just want a solution that could work for anyone. So we want to make sure anyone could find something from Mighty Buildings that they need or they want. We had an overlap in the floor plans, but I think Kit of Parts are more bigger single family homes designs. So it's just a completely different audience. It's more like builders, developers, kind of investment mindset, I would say. So yeah, we certainly market those differently in comparison to modular and ADUs. It's more, emotional purchase and multi-generational living campaigns that we did, because initially we thought most of the ADUs would be built for, additional income, extra income, but in reality, it was a purely kind of granny flat type of use case, like multi-generational living, because people already had homes. Why would they need another home? They just wanted to keep their family close. And that's the trend that sort of changed, how we did certain things based on the customer feedback and data that we've received from early customers.
Well, since we have a marketing and PR person on this panel, I think we should ask for her expertise in some ideas about marketing and public relations and digital media and social media for, to talk about this issue and get people on board.
So you want me to talk? So sorry, can you just repeat?
Just tell us what you're seeing with your clients. Do you have clients that are doing modular or offsite home production, and how you counsel them and what you do in terms of marketing?
We don't actually have any modular offsite that we're working with right now. It's a fascinating sector that obviously we're keeping an eye on. We haven't had any clients that are kind of going head to head or directly. It's more the traditional site built homes, but I think there's still, there's a lot of competition, and there's a lot that, you have to try to differentiate and set yourself apart. So, as a full service agency, we're kind of always looking for multi-layered campaigns that sort of touch different audiences in different ways. So, you could have one message point, or key differentiator, but how you communicate that via social media versus a press, a media story versus what you put on your website, all kind of varies a little bit differently. So I think you have to keep kind of all of those things in mind. And then whether you're talking to somebody in the trade or you're talking to a consumer, and then even geographically. So there are a lot of different nuances and layers into how you put a campaign together and sort of how you communicate it to each of those audiences.
So which audience would you choose? Would you go to younger people? I'm just curious, is it going to be millennials and younger who are going to be interested in these homes? Is it going to be empty nesters?
Yeah, are you asking me regarding
if as a PR person or marketing, or even, obviously the people who are selling to consumers, who's coming to you? Who wants these?
Millennials want them, but they can't afford them because they got student loan debt. So go to the baby boomers, go to the empty nesters. They've got the money. That's been our experience.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is it's less about the generation and more about the values, and people who are, they're coming to us because we're a certified B corporation, right? We're focused on benefiting the planet, benefiting our community, so it's more of a values fit, I think, than a generational fit. So within each generation, there are the millennials who've done well, who are looking at this just the same way that they're boomers who aren't. So I'm not sure that's the right lens, but it's such a complex thing. It's not an easy sieve to apply. And I'd be curious for what other people think.
I think it's a multi-generational play because it's, you combine, different, people of different age on one residence. And especially in California with SB9, like there's just going to be more of that coming, in the next couple of years. So, you can market to one audience, but like a key decision maker would be, a different generation, because they would have to live in that house. So just having this kind of open mindset, and I guess telling a story of a previous client, that's very important to show how it's been done before, who lived in it, why they chose it, why they went for it. I think that's probably the key to help market the offsite and modular these days.
Yeah, I think it is a values decision, like Steve was saying. That's why people select a particular builder. It may have nothing to do with offsite at all. It may have to do with the values that Steve and his company, put out through their website, and the fact that they're a B Corp and they probably publish an impact report every year. I think that goes a long way in attracting the right types of customers. So our job is to put out and to work with folks like Katy to put out the right type of messaging and content to attract the types of customers that each of our businesses want to service, I think.
Yeah, it's probably less about the age or the specific, and it's more about what the message is, because that it's more about what you're trying to say or get across. It's not necessarily because they're a millennial or a boomer. And also probably by market too, that there are probably areas that, tend to have communities of more kind of environmentally like focused ideals, or could be like more tech focused. So depending on, again, it's not so much the offsite part like you guys were all talking about, but it's more about the other value propositions.
Something occurred to me from some of the things that you guys were doing. Delivery day, love that. And, inviting people to the set day on your side, Brian. I think we could also step back and look at those things and say, that's a great opportunity to demonstrate to the municipality that you're delivering the home in how much less disruptive the process is. You don't have dumpsters, you don't have trade contractors in and out, it's not as noisy, it's kind of refined to a shorter period of time in which it's delivered. And it's exciting, it's impact, it brings interest to the neighborhood. So I think there's an opportunity to look back and say, well, what are the pain points that you might be solving for the communities in which you're delivering those homes, and how can you leverage some of the stories that you're telling with your customers to tell the stories to the community, even beyond some of the things that you're doing in factories. So I think if we can do a better job as an industry from a PR perspective on kind of the benefits of it, not just the product itself, but the impact of the delivery process, I think that is something to consider as well. We have a couple more minutes, and there's one thing I want to make sure, because there was an interesting thing that floated in. I just hopped back on to give you some highlights of a couple things that are coming up soon for us. But there was a question here I want to make sure we don't miss. Do you have a warranty program that is different from standard home builders, usually a third party, and do you use that to market your products? Because I think that the idea of warranty and how that might be different from a 10-year that you would get from a builder is an important thing that we should touch on before we close out today. So I'm going to float that to, I'm going to pick on you just so we go and so we all take a turn. So Brian, and then Natalia, and then we'll close with Steve on that front.
So we have traditional 10-year, just like a site builder.
Same. We have a limited fit and finish warranty, but what we just kind of observed and discovered that in the first year, it's very high touch care. So we went out to the sites to fix, any issues or any kind of maintenance requests. So we definitely did more than kind of we claim we would do, just to ensure that, we're there for them and they kind of have a good touch and feel, after they've got their home delivered in the first year.
We Deltec also uses that sort of third-party warranty process. I think that's pretty standard. We've, to my knowledge, never had to use it. Our structures are pretty robust, and but I think the interesting thing that the offsite companies have to offer that maybe we don't talk enough about is, Deltec's been around for 54 years. We've had customers 20 years ago, they'll call us with a question. We're always here, always can pick up the phone. We can help answer their question, even if it's not something that is a warranty issue. There's this great wealth of knowledge because we've got this robust process. We're a manufacturer, whereas builders tend to not always be as easy to find or as long lasting. So I think that's a benefit that the customer gets. We're always going to be here. They can call us with anything.
Great. So want to thank you guys for your participation today. And I think we covered most of the questions. As I said earlier on the call, in case you came in a little bit late, thanks to the panel today, focusing on consumer expectations throughout the delivery process and the service process of offsite construction. We did have several panel discussions and side conversations over IBS last week. We are connected to our partners at SGC Horizon, that would be ProBuilder and Construct Utopia. So we're going to be stepping back over the next week or so and kind of looking at what we discussed last week and what we discussed this week, and rolling out a package of content for you guys. So be watching our social channels. The area that we're most active in is LinkedIn, since that's where we see our community is most active. If you are a member or a partner in the Alliance, there will be even more content available to you on our website. Behind the wall that's searchable, it will be tagged so that you can find it. And there, you'll actually, from registering today, you'll have access to an archive from the session. And for members, you'll have access to a whole host of other resources in addition that will also tag to this event page. So when you joined us today and came to the event page, you would come back to that event page and there will be, instead of an attend tab, there will be a recap tab. And Natalie and our team will also send you a link to all of these assets so that you can use them. If you're going to be at IMN in a couple of weeks, I will be there. Stacy and I are going to do some site visits in Nashville before the conference, and I will be hosting a panel on build to rent and ESG for their conference in Nashville. So that will be a very interesting discussion I'm looking forward to having. So look me up if you're going to be there. And then next month, we're going to shift focus for our third Tuesday event on tech and data. So be watching your email on that front for more details on what's going on in the next third Tuesday event. And thank you everyone for participating today. And we'll see you online again soon.